What the hell is this? I mentally asked myself. I'd been absently scratching a spot on my arm as I worked at my desk, and glancing at it noticed the area I'd been scratching was inflamed with a red rash about an inch in diameter. There seemed to be small welts with small spots of blood in the center. I got up and left my office, heading for my coworker's office next door. "Hey, Max, what's this?" I asked, showing him my arm. He looked at it for a moment before replying. "Jim, it looks like an insect bite. Doesn't look like a mosquito bite. Maybe a spider or something like that. It looks like you should put a little cortisone salve on it and an antibiotic so it doesn't get infected. I'll have to check when I get home tonight to see if there are any spiders around. Most likely got bit while I was sleeping last night. So, I'll start in the bedroom." "Thanks, Mac," I told him as I headed back to my office. At lunchtime that day I went out and got tubes of cortisone and an antibiotic and applied them. By the time I got home that night, a lot of the redness had disappeared and most of the itching had stopped. I wasn't too concerned, but I thought I'd follow up with a search of our bedroom that evening to see if I could find the culprit that had given me the bite. My wife, Jill, was waiting for me when I got home. She works in town, but usually gets home before me and would have dinner started before I got home. I smelled roast beef from the crock pot as I walked into the kitchen. She turned from the stove as I came in and gave me a tentative smile. "Dinner in half an hour," she told me as I leaned toward her for a kiss. She puckered and gave me a light kiss before turning back to the stove. "That's all I get?" I asked, feeling a little disappointed. Lately, she seemed to be very reticent about our relationship and exhibited a coolness, even disrespect, toward me. "I'm tired and you're lucky I have the strength to kiss and cook dinner. And by the way, you didn't take the garbage out before left for work, and we have a full bag under the sink." "I'll get the garbage later," I responded, hoping to mollify her. If you're enjoying my content, consider joining my Patreon community. By becoming a patron, you'll get access to full parts of my videos much earlier than everyone else. Plus, you'll be supporting me to create even more awesome content for you. Check out the link in the description to join now. I could see her face turning red and I knew I was in for it. "Why the hell can't it be now? You're always trying to put things off." This was typical of our relationship lately, and I was getting a little tired of it. She was ready to argue and complain about me at the drop of a hat, it seemed. She didn't ask about my day, so I just kept quiet about the bite on my arm. I wondered if her attitude she was due to depression. I'd read somewhere that when a wife started finding fault with her husband and was quick to take offense, it could be a wife's symptom of depression. It was just as well to play it safe, as it was obvious she wasn't in a good mood. I quietly got the bag of garbage out from under the sink, while she glared at me, and took it out to the garbage can in the garage. Then I grabbed a beer from the fridge and went into the living room to wait until dinner was ready. I just wanted to stay away from her. If it was depression that was her problem, she should probably see a psychiatrist and get treated for it, but I hesitated to mention it to her. I could visualize her response if I brought it up, and I didn't know if I wanted to tackle that yet. I should tell you about Jill and I before I proceed with my story. We've been married for 10 years or so, and we don't have any children because she decided that her career was more important to her. She's 35, quite attractive, whereas I'm 36 and average in looks. That is, I don't stand out in a crowd. She's head of the underwriters department in a regional insurance company. I'm an engineer with a local consulting firm. We both make good money and aren't hurting financially. We were much in love and lust when we first married, but this has tapered off over the years, so that's our history such that it applies to this story. After dinner, I began cleanup activities while she went into the living room. While I was working, she announced she was going next door to talk with our neighbor. She and the woman next door spent a lot of time together. Her name was Fran, and she was divorced. Her husband had caught her playing around, and after filing for divorce, just picked up his things and moved to California. He left her the house with an underwater mortgage, and since she made as much as he did, there was no alimony. They had no kids, so I guess he made out. I wasn't happy that Jill hung out with her so much, but I didn't have much say in the matter. I figured that while she was gone, I'd go check our bedroom for spiders after I finished clearing up from dinner. Later in the bedroom, I used a flashlight to look around the room and the furniture, but I didn't spot any spiders. I did find a little brown bug on the headboard that I captured and put in an empty pill bottle. Then I found another one under the edge of the pillow that I killed. I wondered what they were and where they came from, and I also wondered if they caused my bite. A friend of mine, Jake, was into gardening in a big way, and I thought he might know the answer. I gave him a call. "What's up, Jim?" "Jake, I need your help. I have a bug here that I found in our bedroom, and I've never seen one like it before. Do you think you can identify it for me?" "I'll try. Can you describe it?" "I'll do better than that. I'll take a close-up digital picture of it and email it to you." "That'll work." "Okay, say, when you take the picture, put something common next to it, like a penny, so I can establish the size of it." "Will do. Thanks, Jake." About 10 minutes later, I was sending off an email with a picture of the bug as an attachment. Then I sat back and waited. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Hey, Jim, you'd better get hold of an exterminator. You've got bed bugs." "Bed bugs? Where the hell did we get bed bugs?" "I thought they were a fictitious insect in fairy tales. They're making a comeback, Jim, and they're very hard to get rid of. That's why I recommend getting hold of an exterminator as soon as possible." "Have you or Jill been traveling lately? People are picking them up in hotels and bringing them home in their luggage or in their clothes. They're even picking them up at work in the big cities." "No, we haven't been away from home or near a hotel room in the last couple of months. I haven't heard of anybody getting them at work around here. At least Jill hasn't said anything about her work." "Well, you've picked them up from somewhere. Like I said, get hold of an exterminator, and he might have some ideas for you. If you've got them in your bedroom and you haven't had them too long, they may be isolated there." "Okay, thanks, Jake." "Bed bugs? Shit." I thought, I'd better go up and search the bedroom and see if I can find any more of them or the source. It's too late in the day to call an exterminator, so I'll have to wait till morning for that. Before I went to the bedroom, I fired up my old PC and pulled up Wikipedia to check out bed bugs. They had quite a bit of info on the little critters, and it was a little scary. The only saving grace, I thought, would be that Jill hadn't complained about getting bitten yet, so maybe we hadn't reached an infestation stage, but we soon would if they started laying eggs. I went into our bedroom and began my search, starting at the bed Jill and I had shared since we married. I began a systematic search of crevices and mattress seams, looking for more bugs or evidence they were around. Except for the two I'd already found, I didn't find another or evidence there were more of them. Looking under the bed, I noticed the small cloth satchel amongst the dust and rolls of gift wrapping paper Jill kept there. Jill used the bag to take with her to work if she was going to stop at her health club afterward. I pulled it out and inspected it. It was empty and I didn't find any bed bugs, but I did find some evidence they'd been there. I also noticed a hard residue that looked like dried sea on the bottom of the bag. Holding it to my nose, I took a smell and got a whiff of what sure smelled like it and the smell of her juices. What the hell? I thought. What's going on? There was no way I could think about that this was Is she cheating on me? Maybe there's a logical reason for what I'm seeing, but I can't think of one real quick like. Maybe she loaned it to a friend and her friend returned it like this. Not very likely though. If she's screwing around, I needed to find out fast and then make up my mind what I want to do about it. With the search for bed bugs forgotten, I put the bag back where I found it and went to my den and made myself a big scotch on the rocks. Should I confront her? Before I do that, I should confirm if she was having an affair, with who, and for how long. Knowing that would determine how I would proceed. Confronting her would just bring denials and leave me without a definite closure in the matter and lack of trust in her. It wouldn't be a good way to continue our marriage. Now, how to go about finding out? I could hire a PI, but that would probably be prohibitively expensive, so that left do-it-yourself. Electronic gadgets were the rage, so I got back on my PC to see what was out there. It seems there was a hell of a lot sites selling gizmos to catch cheating spouses, and I studied the possibilities of the various snooper items to see what would fit into my situation and wouldn't cost an arm and a leg. It would appear from the look and smell of her little bag that Jill wasn't going to her spa after work. She was using the time to get together with her lover and was using the bag to carry her sexy lingerie to and from the tryst. It was obvious that she was going to a motel or a private home and wasn't doing it in the back seat of a car. I would use that information to pinpoint what items to buy to find out who, where, and how often she did it. I finally selected a small recording device that could be hidden in her purse and a GPS unit I could attach to her car. I didn't think a phone tap would work too well as she mostly used her cell phone for personal calls. The GPS unit would help me keep track of her whereabouts while away from home. I dug out my credit card and was just finishing ordering the items with express delivery when I heard Jill come back home. She didn't come looking for me as I heard her go back to our bedroom. Ignoring me and being miserable to me were pretty much her attitude lately, and I now knew why. She was screwing around, and I could be history in a little while if she decided to go with her lover, so I'd better think about protecting myself financially. Back on the old PC, and some banking and investment transfers were made. When I was finished, I felt a little better. If for some reason I was wrong about this, I could change things back later. However, I didn't think I was on the wrong track. I would make changes to my insurance and will later, after I'd gotten definite proof of her adultery. 2 days later, I had received the surveillance items I'd ordered, and it didn't take me long to read the instructions that came with the GPS tracker and set up my laptop to monitor it. Then a moment to slip out to the garage and attach it to the underside of her car. I quickly followed suit with the mini voice recorder while she was visiting her friend Fran that evening. The transmitter for the recorder went into trunk of her car. Once that was done, I sat back and waited. My wait wouldn't be long because tomorrow was Thursday, and she usually stopped at the spa after work on that day. She typically left for work before I did, so the next morning I watched her car wend its way to her work site via the GPS unit as I watched on my laptop. She'd taken her little gym bag with her, so I knew that she was probably going to meet her lover later. While she was driving, I could hear the radio playing, and then I heard her voice as she was talking with someone on her cell phone. "Hi, are you ready for tonight?" "Good. I can hardly wait." "The usual time and place?" "That's fine. See you there." "I love you." My suspicions were confirmed. Her statement of her love for him probably meant she was getting ready to jump ship and go to be with him soon, and that they'd been doing this for a while. Now, I just had to find out who he was. I'd follow her tonight from work and see who she met. It sounded like they were using separate cars, which would aid my surveillance activities. That afternoon, I left work early and was sitting down the street from her workplace about half an hour before her quitting time. Her car was still in the parking lot as I waited, and shortly after her work was over, her car began moving as I followed it on my laptop. Then I started my car and followed her trace to the red roof and near the interstate. I pulled into the parking lot of the motel several moments after she'd arrived and hung way back so I could watch from a distance. She was still sitting in her car outside the office, but shortly after, another car arrived and parked next to hers. The male driver got out, waved to her, and then went into the office. He came out a few minutes later, and I watched as he got in his car and drove down to the end unit. She followed in her car. They both got out of their cars and went into room 142. She was carrying her little gym bag as she entered. Her lover had looked familiar, and I tried to place who he was. He wasn't very big, quite slim in fact, but rather good-looking. Now I remember. I'd seen him at several of Jill's office parties we'd been to. He was married to a woman much bigger than himself, and being a redhead, she definitely had a temper and was very possessive about her husband. I wondered what she would do if she knew about this little tryst. I remembered their names too. Joe and Melinda Bateman. We'd even shared a table at one of the parties. I didn't recall that he and my wife were very involved then, and I wondered what had triggered this romance. Suddenly, I had an idea that was bound to stir things up. I got out of my car, went into the motel office, and asked to see the city phone book. I quickly found a listing for Joseph and Melinda Bateman, then went out and dialed their telephone number on my cell phone. "Hello, is this Mrs. Bateman? Melinda Bateman?" "Yes, who's calling?" "You don't know me, but I wonder if you know where your husband is right now?" "He's at the gym, and why in hell do you care?" "I think I should inform you that right now, he's at the Red Roof in near the Maple Road interchange in room 142 with a woman." "You're lying. He wouldn't dare do anything like that. Check it out for yourself, Mrs. Bateman." Slam. The phone went dead, and with a smile on my face, I went back, got in my car, and waited to see what would happen. It was about 20 minutes later a big Cadillac came tearing into the parking lot and pulled up near room 142. A very angry red-headed female Amazon got out, and after confirming the identity of Jill's lover's car parked in front, began pounding on the door to room 142. After a few minutes, the door opened and I could see that the door chain was in place as Joe peeked out through the gap. That didn't stop her because she reared back and kicked the door open. causing it to hit poor Joe in the face. I was really beginning to enjoy this as I visualized both Joe and Jill getting a severe beating from a very angry woman. It only took a second to realize that I'd seriously underestimated the rage of a jilted woman. Shots rang out in the room. From where I was sitting, I couldn't see into the room, even with the door thrown wide open. But the gunshots boded no good for Joe and Jill. I was almost in shock as I watched Melinda come back out gripping what looked like a 9mm handgun. She got in her car and with tires screaming tore out of the parking lot, almost hitting a truck and leaving. It was only seconds after she left that doors to other rooms began to open and people carefully emerged to see what had happened. The clerk from the office came running down and looked in the room before turning to a nearby occupant and screamed, "Call 911. Hurry." I didn't dare move. I thought if I started my car and left it would call attention to me at my strange behavior. Instead, I got out of my car and joined the crowd that was forming around the door to room 142. I could just make out the body of Joe sprawled across the bed with blood running off his chest. I couldn't see Jill. It was only a few minutes and the EMTs and police arrived, and I had to make a decision on what to do. No doubt my wife was in the room too and had likely been shot. Should I be rushing in to see about her? I really didn't think she was my wife anymore and not my responsibility. Also, should I feel responsible because of my call to Melinda? I didn't think I should be responsible for another person's actions. The police quickly organized the site as a crime scene as the EMTs went into the room. After a few minutes, an EMT came out of the room and shook his head at the police sergeant in charge. From that, I determined that both Joe and Jill were dead. Some people began to drift away then, and I decided to follow. No one paid any attention as I got in my car and drove away. The police detectives and press was beginning to arrive as I left. Some might say I was a cold-hearted bastard not to stick around and see what had happened to my wife, but I felt she'd broken our wedding contract and I no longer needed to be responsible for her since she was dead. That does seem harsh now, but you have to remember I was still boiling mad at her too, but I was feeling sorry for her too. That evening, 2 police officers came to our home an hour or two after I arrived. Mr. Donovan? I knew they were there because of what had happened at the motel, but I tried to act as though I didn't have any knowledge about the incident. Yes, may I help you? Is Jill Donovan your wife? Yes. Is there a problem? We hate to tell you this, sir, but your wife is dead. He and his partner looked appropriately contrite and sad as he told me. I suppose they'd done this bearer of bad tidings bit before. Now I had to look appropriately shocked that my wife was dead. I hadn't been totally sure when I left the motel, but I anticipated she was. Dead? What happened? She said she was going to the gym when she left earlier. The officers looked at one another before replying. She was shot, sir. Shot? What? Where? It was in a motel down on Maple, sir. The officers were beginning to look very uncomfortable. What was she doing in a motel? I was beginning to get nervous about my act. She was with a man, sir, and his wife found them and shot them. My God, how terrible. But officers, I recently found out my wife has been cheating on me, so I'm not surprised. Where is the man's wife? Have you caught her? She's dead too, sir. She took her own life. I was almost speechless. My God. Yes, sir. Will you be all right, sir? Yes, yes. Thank you very much for the information. Where is my wife now? She's been taken to the city morgue, sir. You can go down and identify her, and then make arrangements for burial. They open at 9. Again, thank you very much, officers. I'll do that in the morning. Good night. I told them as I closed the door. I don't think I looked or acted appropriately shocked at the news they brought, but I didn't feel any remorse at my actions. Other things had to be done now. First, I got on the phone and called Jill's parents. They should be the first to know, I thought. When I told them what had occurred, they were dumbstruck and unbelieving at first that their daughter was dead and that she'd been committing adultery when she died. They agreed to meet me the next morning at the morgue and to help make final arrangements for burial. It was a sad conversation, and I knew it was going to be a hard time for them. Next, I called my parents and let them know what had happened. They were just as shocked as Jill's parents were and couldn't come to grips with the fact that Jill had committed adultery and was now dead. I knew that the news hit them hard because they'd always liked Jill. I had loved Jill until recently, But the last few months had been hard on our marriage, and I could feel my love for her slipping away. When I found out she was cheating, the residual love I had for her just disappeared, and I think I began to hate her. I couldn't even grieve for her now. It began to dawn on me that my call to Melinda, telling her about her husband's indiscretion, could be traced back to me. So I planned to call my lawyer in the morning and make an appointment to talk with him about my involvement in my wife's and Joe's death. I didn't think I'd done anything that I could be charged with, but I thought I'd cover myself in case. The police were boldly checking to see what kicked off Joe's wife, if they were doing their jobs, and I wanted to be sure of my position. I went to bed early that evening but couldn't sleep well. I kept reliving the day's events in my mind, wondering if I could have done anything differently. I guess I decided I couldn't have changed anything. I met with the lawyer later that week, and after listening to my story, confirmed that I could not be held legally responsible for the deaths of my wife and her lover. I never did hear from the police about my phone call anyway. It might seem hard, but I thought I came away from my marriage better off than if it had ended in a divorce. I was her sole beneficiary, so all her assets became mine. If we divorced, I would have had to split everything with her, and it would have been very expensive. I'm looking for another wife now, and I'm still young at 36, so children will definitely be part of my next marriage. I give thanks sometimes for a bedbug bite that started the whole thing. I did get hold of an exterminator, and he did a thorough inspection and didn't find any more of the critters.